Yeah,
anymore.
and I really hope that doesn't come off like rude, but that's how it is. There's no such thing as balance if you're really hitting something hard, but you can't really like fully be balanced if you're really like hardcore pursuing something.
Dude, if you're trying to be the best of all time, where is there room for balance?
Right. Oh, I'm gonna sound so mean. They have to either be like on your level, or you want people that are more successful.
And I have exponentially less and less time for all the bullshit and doing things that don't align with where I'm trying to get to anymore. I don't know if I can go through another year, 6 months, 2 weeks, or whatever it is, just like kind of sitting back and being like, oh, because like time is ticking.
Like being in a dark room, like it makes sense because we have to feel loved and appreciated and like be able to express that, you know? So that's wild, but it does make sense.
Official. Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Heart and Hustle podcast. I'm so excited to talk about this person's hustle today. I've got Lehua here.
Lehua.
I've got Lehua here.
Yes.
And living in Hawaii for so many years, I saw so many beautiful names, and I feel so bad for botching that off the very beginning.
No, it's okay.
So I brought Lehua here today to be able to talk about her hustle, because we've been friends for generations, it feels like.
Yeah,
but we've spent so much time seeing each other transform and do so much different stuff that I just wanted to be able to bring you on and highlight you as an amazing individual, because you've got so many experiences and so much life to share. And I know everybody who's listening and watching to the podcast is going to be enjoying this. So why don't you give us a little background about yourself, just like a high level, where you're from, family, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised on the beautiful island of Maui. So I was there until 18. I'm just going to give snapshots.
Yeah, it's totally cool.
Was born and raised there till 18, moved to Las Vegas, met you as well as our other amazing friends here in Vegas, got my degree in broadcast journalism. It did start off as dance and theater because that has my heart, performing arts.
Yeah.
But I did change it to broadcast journalism because I was a little nervous. I was insecure at whatever the age we were at, 20, 21.
Yeah, scary
very
times.
Fragile, you know, very, and at that age, you absorb what people say as truth. You know what I'm saying? Which is much different at our age now, which I'm sure we can get into that. But anyway, got my degree, stayed in Vegas, did a couple of different jobs, worked at Hilton in the vacation ownership division there, and then also did, of course, you have to cocktail in Vegas.
100%.
I mean, not to be, you know, not sexist, but would that be?
Got to make that money, dog.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like if you're a female in Vegas, you can make money cocktailing and have a good time. So I did that for a little bit. And what else did I do? My most recent normal person real job was at a virtual production studio called View Studio. So it's super amazing. Were you there?
I've never been to View, but I saw all of your Instagram posts and I was like, dude, I don't know what this venue is, but it is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, they do, you know, feature films, their commercials, and virtual production is like basically virtualizing an environment. So, and then and events too. So I did like a really cool like yoga experience.
I saw that.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Dang, I wish you were there. But anyway, so that led into my fiance guiding me into working on my first feature film alongside him. He's the big boss.
Okay.
So I was the production coordinator, and it was so cool just to see a movie, you know, being created from beginning to end. And then once it comes out, then I can see it in different eyes, you know, since I was like a part of it. So it was really cool.
That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, a couple of the things about like your hustle is we've seen you go through so many different stages. Professional yoga instructor, you're a future wrestler as well. So gonna be on WWE or whatever networks there are these days. I've seen you throwing down on Instagram. It's been so sick to see.
Thank you.
But it's just crazy to me like how you've gotten into all these things as well. So I know that you've always had a passion for yoga instruction and just being a yogi in general. So where did that kind of come from? Yeah,
so that specifically, the teaching aspect started during COVID and during 2020. Yeah, so I was practicing since 16. So real quick, I'll rewind. I was a gymnast from age 3 to 16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was like my heart and soul, right? Gymnastics and flipping around and competing and all that. So, but after my father passed away when I was 12, it really wasn't the same. So like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I was kind of like, I was still in it, but it was really hard because he was such a big part of it. You know, like your dad cheering and everything. So at 16, I was like, okay, I'm going to, you know, make peace with gymnastics and I'm going to try something else. And it's been a good run. But it was like some of the best times of my life. Like competitive gymnastics, like taught me so much. Now as an adult, you know, like when we do things when we were little and then we see how it really transformed us in our life now. So wait, where was I going with this? Gymnastics, right? Pro wrestling. This will connect.
Yes,
I swear.
yes.
So my gymnastics background really helped with the pro wrestling. And so, no, we're talking about yoga. Never mind.
Yep.
So I stopped gymnastics. Then I was like, what am I going to do? Because when you identify with something that you've done for so long, right? I'm sure you can relate.
Oh,
like
yeah, absolutely.
A sport, whatever it is, a hobby, just something that you've done for years and years and years. You're like, okay, well, who am I? Like, what do I do now? Because that's all you're used to. And then my mom was like, hey, come to this yoga class with me. And at the time, which is hilarious, I thought, oh, that's going to make my arms so big.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that
like,
mentality.
What? You know, like the what, like a chaturanga is going to get me jacked?
Huge.
No way, right? But at that age, right, again, so many insecurities. And I'm just speaking for myself, you know, I'm not saying everybody does, but at 16, oh my gosh, I was so like insecure about my body, about everything. Like I didn't know who I was, especially without gymnastics. So I was like, okay, yeah, let me go to this class. And I remember actually being scared that I was going to get too jacked.
Wow.
Which it's hilarious because now I hit the weights like a psycho.
A savage.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, right. So it's just mind blowing, like how different we see ourselves now.
And I feel like a huge part of that like culture back in the day was, I feel like we grew up, and I love to say this, we grew up in like the Lizzie McGuire age where everybody was so skinny and you wanted to be small and yada yada. And then we transformed into like this fitness culture. And so many people struggled with like, should I be lifting weights? What's going to happen? Am I just going to be huge walking around? And like, they couldn't be farther from the truth.
Right. No, 100%. Because really at the time, you know, when we were that age, it's like, you know, in the movies and on TV, it's like, okay, you know, skinny is pretty, or like small and petite is pretty. And I'm not saying that that's not now, you know, but because everybody has like their own beauty is so subjective, you know, it's like there's so many layers to it. And so, yeah, back then it's like, oh, I can't have one like tricep or I'm going to be masculine, you know? And like, I really think that has to do with my name too. And I'm going all over the place right now, but we're just going to go with it.
Yep.
So, because it made me think about, I think, and maybe somebody can resonate with this. I was born with a boy's name. So I was born female, but with a boy's name. And so I really I think that was the root of the insecurity and why I didn't want to get any muscle, or like I didn't want to have any manly, you know, what do you call that?
Yeah, like attributes.
Yeah, attributes, exactly. So all of these things connect, you know, and so I added, the name's a whole conversation. But anyway, I changed my name and now we're here and I really resonate with Lehua. But yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this yoga thing or whatever, you know, and then I actually really loved it. It started off with very surface level with, okay, I just want this to make my body look good. I just want this to stay lean, and, you know, it was purely aesthetics. That's all it was. And then, which I feel like sometimes that happens with people, which is fine. You know, it's like, oh, if you want a way to move your body that's not like crazy and not intimidating, you know, then yoga is a really beautiful path for that to enter. But then as you go through it, it's like, ooh, you better be ready for like some transformational thoughts.
Seriously. When I got started doing yoga, I didn't realize that it was like a practice as much for my mind as it was for my body. And that was something that I absolutely love about the yoga practice. I mean, I specifically am not doing like chaturangas and flows, but I do like yin. And like sometimes sitting through those long stretches is just like so freeing for my body, but it unlocks all of this emotion as well that like I never anticipated.
Yeah, because you're physically sitting in this discomfort. And that's like life, right? Like when we're in something uncomfortable, we're like, just get me out. Like,
Fucking
I don't
truth.
want to be here, you know. But it's like when you're in that and your body is being forced to physically like be uncomfortable, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna hold it and breathe. Then you get to go second level and like third level in your mind of like, oh, okay. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was like still thinking about that, you know, and all these things kind of surface. That's why people cry in yoga sometimes. It's totally normal. Like, I cry all the time.
Yeah, I mean, not only because an instructor like Sean is kicking your ass, but also it's just like the pain that I've been holding inside for so long is just,
Right.
you know, so transformative. Wow.
Yeah, and there's different types, there's different styles, right? Like, you're probably not going to go so many levels deep in like a physical like power yoga. That's a little bit different than like yin, though. I feel like the slower pace the class is, I'm not saying you can't feel emotions in power flow, but the more that you're forced to slow down physically, the more that things arise.
Yeah.
And some people don't really like that. And that's fine. You know, some people aren't ready for it. But if you're like welcoming those things and you're ready to really go in, then it's like, oh, hello. Okay, that I'm still mad at so-and-so from whatever. Like, I need to work on that. I need to release that, you know?
I feel like that statement is a perfect way to describe you in general. Like, I feel like you're always willing to do the work that's necessary to like continue to advance. On other podcasts I've talked about with guests, it's like so often we get stuck in like these same loops of life. Like, we live the same 6 months over and over and over again. And it's so saddening to see, but like, you've grown so much since I've known you that it's been amazing to see like you blossom in general. And one thing that we share, so I don't think I've ever announced this on the podcast before, but my first name is Franklin. I go by my middle name of Keenan, and that's what I've identified. And we have that middle name connection, which I think is so cool.
Yes.
And Lehua is just like such a beautiful name.
Thank
and
you.
It's so
Thank you
cool.
so
And it breaks my heart to hear that like you got teased as a young kid for your name.
Yeah, I did.
And I did as well. And it's just like having to shred that, you know what I mean? Because being Franklin, being born in 1990, everybody was like, hey, it's Franklin, like making fun of me for the turtle on TV and everything.
Oh my gosh.
And then I switched it to Keenan, and everybody's like, where's your best friend Kel? And so everybody always bagged me consistently for that kind of stuff. And it was just like, why?
Find a way, to like, and one, especially when, did this happen when you're young, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, like kids tease anything that they can find, they'll tease. So I feel like that's something a lot of people in general would just resonate with, is like, we all got made fun of in some way.
Yeah.
You know, and particularly with those who have been made fun of with their names, like us, it's like, our names are our identity. So like, it's a certain type of wound that's like, oh, you're cutting out my soul right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're really
like,
coming at me, dog.
Yeah, like you're like 5 years old. Like, wow.
All right, Sarah or Ben. You know what I mean? Like, relax.
So it's like, it's crazy because I specifically remember the person too. And at a place now, I'm not like, oh, I hope you go to hell. No, it's not like that. But I
do
remember,
have a picture of her or him on my.
Yeah, a particular kid that was like making fun and like, you know, of my name, and like that I had no boobs, and like that I was, you know, like, so of course then it's like, I'm like, oh, I don't feel feminine because I don't have boobs, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but it's crazy to think that one comment or like one thing from somebody at that age, like, and the younger we are, I really feel like we're more fragile, you know, until we kind of know ourselves. And yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's wild, man. And it's just like, I feel like so many times I've like shed the person who I used to be to like evolve into this new individual. And even doing like things like the podcast as an example is like really pushed me out of my shell to be able to sit down and like share stories with people on a consistent basis.
Because
so my question
people can resonate with that.
Yeah.
With things that you're saying that people don't usually talk about, so they feel alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. So my question for you is, do you think part of switching to your middle name was part of you kind of like shedding that identity as well? Because I know that you've gone through so much transformation. Like last time that we kind of like were hanging out, you were traveling the country, living in like an Airstream.
Yeah.
And like in a previous relationship and stuff like that. I know that it wasn't easy for you.
Right.
And then you kind of got rid of that individual, that entire chapter of your life. And do you think like stepping into this new name was something that kind of helped you just like show up as a superhero?
Yes. Like, you could not have hit that more in the nail. It's like, so just to give everyone a background, so I was born Sean. I changed it to Shauna. I added the A, and then I decided to go by my middle name, which is actually, to come full circle, what my biological father, he's the only one in my entire life who called me Lehua.
I love that.
Isn't that like, And I remember when I was like, it was Michaela who said, why don't you go by, it was Michaela who said that to me.
Yeah.
She's like, I was like, I don't resonate with Shauna. Like, I still like don't know who I am, or like I can't like pull anything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, why don't you go by your middle name? And it was just like,
I'm here.
What?
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So it was like, and I'm like so grateful that she said that, because who knows? But then when you bring it back full circle, I'm like, wait a minute. My dad called me that, and he was the only one.
I bet he's like looking down, so happy to
gosh,
like find you like absolutely
He's
aligning
pumped
with
right
what
now.
he had envisioned for you.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's just crazy how everything somehow connects. And like, I feel like the older we get, like the more we connect dots, we're like, it becomes comical. So we're like, oh, that's beautiful. That's cool. This is why I feel this way. And this is like why I am who I am, you know, just like I'm sure you've had tons of moments like that.
Absolutely.
Like light bulb moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a personal question. And this is something
Bring
that I've had to deal with, is kind of just like shedding people that don't fit me anymore. So I know when you were in your previous relationship, and no disrespect to your
Yeah,
fiance
no
now,
disrespect to any
but
of
I
my
know that
previous
like
relationships.
you really were not living up to your fullest self. So what was it like kind of in those moments of recognizing like maybe you're dimming your own light a little bit, and you
Yeah.
had to kind of like shed that person? What was kind of like that journey like?
Yeah. So I'm going to preface this too with saying, I feel like, because with the relationship, I never felt, you know, that he was a bad person, or that like his intention was to make me feel some type of way and like bring me down. I really believe he was a good person. So I think sometimes trauma, because we were both dealing with trauma.
Yeah.
And so I feel like sometimes trauma in a relationship with two people, whether one, I feel like if both people are not recognizing it and working on it, there's going to be a bat out of hell somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be some type of like eruptions and chaos and just gross feelings, you know? But if you're in a relationship with trauma and you're both aware of it and you're learning each other's and you're like helping each other, then I feel like it can be very successful. Like with my particular instance, we both had trauma. No disrespect to him, but I recognized mine and I was really working on mine. I don't know if he was working on his, because he wasn't necessarily sharing with me. Because I feel like it was something he didn't want to talk about. And that's fine. Some people are not ready to open and like, you know, communicate even with a partner in that sense. And I believe it just wasn't the time to do that, you know. And every crazy relationship we're in teaches us a lesson. And what I learned in that relationship was that I completely lost my identity and my sense of self, because I was just trying to please and like, you know, oh, I'm going to be the nice supportive girlfriend, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there needs to be like hard boundaries.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you can't just go full pushover.
Yeah.
You really can't. Otherwise you will get run over by a train.
And dude, I mean, like losing that sense of identity in a relationship is so tough, because at the end of the day, one thing that I've recognized is we have to be able to stand on our own 2 feet for ourselves, or we're never going to be able to show up for support for that other person either, which is really challenging sometimes to recognize.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, if your cup, you know, the cliche, right? If your cup is empty, you don't got nothing.
Yeah, you
I
can't
can't
pour.
give, even in friendships, whatever, for friendships, romantic relationships, if I'm empty, I have nothing to give you.
Yeah.
You know? And so, yeah, with that, it's like, and this is just not that relationship. This was like other previous relationships. So it's, again, it goes back to recognizing those patterns. And, you know, what you said, like, oh, am I just doing another loop? Am I just doing another loop of, you know, giving up all of myself and not creating healthy boundaries in the dynamic of a relationship, which, by the way, need to be addressed like in the beginning.
ASAP.
And sometimes if it's been a while, I feel like you can still open up and communicate. It's all about communication. But if you can really, and that's the beauty of like my current relationship, is like we really were like open and just said it like it was, like from day one. I think both of us, you know what I mean, have had so many experiences like, hey, let's just be straight up and be open and loving and be, you know, like take any gloves off we have from like defensiveness in past relationships and just like be a team, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, before when I had no sense of myself, I became very resentful. And I feel like that happens a lot with people, you know, in relationships or even friendships, like if you lose yourself. But it was my idea and his idea to do the whole life on the road thing in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But then I changed.
As you should have.
You know, I changed and he stayed the same. Not in a sense where like he wanted to keep doing that, which is fine. But like my path, I was like, ooh, I need to do a little like path change. Mm-hmm. So that's, you know, but then because I wasn't as open as I should have been in expressing that, because I was scared that if I said that, then like, oh, there would be like anger. And, you know, like when you're in denial of a specific outcome, then you're like scared to actually open up about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like so many people who listen, like one of the things that I always think about, just like in being successful in general, it's not just in business, but it's in life. You have to have a solid partner who's willing to support you and go through those path changes. Do you know what I mean? It's not always like a 180, you're going in the opposite direction, but sometimes you just need to pivot 5-10 degrees and you need that support from your partner to be able to kind of push you along that path.
Right, exactly. And the relationships, you know, that we've had previously or whatever, those are all lessons, and those are all meant to be. I never have felt like, oh, that was what a waste of blah 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 years, right? Because it's like, no, we learn mostly about ourselves. It's like, oh dang, like I was very triggered by that, you know, like whatever happened, it's like, okay, that affected me, and then we can compare that to who we are today. And speaking of like supportive partners, it's like I feel so blessed to be in a relationship now where it's like, I told him in the very beginning, I said, hey, so I'm going to be a pro wrestler.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think?
So are you okay with that?
Yeah. So we need to break this down. So you're working at View Studios and you're doing production and you meet your fiance, and then all of a sudden you want to become a pro wrestler. So what is this like?
So I actually had pro wrestling, my love for pro wrestling started developing. What was the date? Because I was on and off it was April of not 2022, maybe 2021, I believe. So I was on and off because I was working 2 jobs. I was working at View. I have an online business, and then I was working at night at Coyote Ugly.
Oh, okay.
So
Yes.
It was like... it was a lot. So I was training as much as I could with the human being that I was, needing some sleep and so, you know, it's hard to be consistent. And so I had a little bit of training and stuff. And the timeline is kind of going away from me. I'm trying to remember the timeline. I was already training for a little bit when I met him. And so he knew that, and he actually came. He drove 9 hours times 2, so 18 hours. He was working on a film in New Mexico and drove from there to come see my very first tag team match.
A real one. This is awesome.
Yeah. And so I was like, hey, you know, this is my first. And like, it was so last minute because straight up, they just needed a female for the match. And I was there. I'm like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
I was nervous, but it's all good. So yeah, it was kind of last minute, and you know, like nobody else could really make it, and he said he was gonna come. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, like let's go. And it was like, yeah, just him there.
Oh my gosh, that's so sick.
Yeah.
So like, how does somebody even become a pro wrestler? Like, what is the process like? Like, did you see an ad? I know that like I don't exactly see opportunities to become a pro wrestler. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, exactly. It's not like we have a tryout tonight.
Yeah. So, and I don't necessarily know too, now that we say this, when one can actually proclaim as, maybe it's like if you get your first paid gig, I'd have to ask like my, you know, like the people I train with, like, when can you declare? Yeah. Right. But that's why I say like I'm in training, because I'm so close to having like my first singles match. So I have a tag team and then a battle royale.
A battle royale.
Yeah. So just like bunch of ladies.
That's so sick. Yeah.
So, and it was cool because it was FSW, Future Stars of Wrestling's very first all women's battle royale. So it was like an honor to be in that one, you know? So that was cool. That was my second one. But anyway, so I had the gymnastics background, and I never thought that I would incorporate that into my life as an adult. Because like, what are you going to do? Adult gymnastics when you're like in your 40s and 50s.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, that's not.
You could.
So I was doing a random promotional model gig for a private military party. I was literally I was there to make sure people signed these waivers there were different stations, and I was at the wrestling station where he became my very first coach, but his name is Cal Jack, and his gimmick is actually like grizzly bear.
Okay.
So they had him put on like a grizzly costume, and he was wrestling these party goers, the military private party goers.
Yeah.
So I was just there, me and this other girl, Zoe, who is now Black Swan, and she's killing it. So we were just randomly paired and making sure people sign waivers and like announcing, be like, all right, blah, 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 hyping the people up. We just jumped in at the end and started wrestling each other for, just for fun.
Yeah.
We had just been watching everyone wrestle all night. And then our coach Cal Jack, he was like, do you guys want to train?
Yeah, you got it, kid.
Do you want to train? And we're like, yeah, like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so, so Dark Arts School is where I first started, where Zoe and I first started. But again, it was like so hard to be consistent, like, with my work schedule and everything. And then when I started at FSW, my current school now, in February of, what year are we in?
23. Yep.
February, of this year, Then I was like really consistent because they have 5 days a week of training options, that you could like go crazy and just train all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I went part-time at View. Before the movie, I went part-time so that I could train more.
Okay.
Like, I was like,
dude, what is the training process like? I mean, like, all I think about is people just like taking slaps to the chest and like hitting the mat and learning how to fall, going off the top rope.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So there's different coaches, right? So so Sin Bodhi is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is Kenny King, Thursday it was Cody, and then Friday, I don't usually go Fridays, but Remy is on Fridays. I'm just named. You're like, who are these people?
These people sound awesome.
Yeah. But there's like a whole schedule, and based off of who you want to coach you can go and go as many times as you want, and it's always different. Sometimes you learn, fundamentals are always really important, and because safety at the end of the day is like the most, like, I can't exaggerate it enough. It's like you're giving your body, it's a dance, and like you're giving your body to somebody, and like your life could literally be in their hands, and vice versa.
Dude, I mean, like every single time I see people wrestling and like they're going off the top rope or they're doing like these slams where people are upside down and they're like landing them on their head, I'm like, how are these people not dying in this process? And it's like, you guys have to go through so much training so you don't get hurt.
So right. So it's like you obviously learn the moves and the proper way to do them and the safe way to do them. And they hurt. Like, what was
one of the first times when you like took a slam or like took a body check or something and you were like, oh my God, like that hurt a little bit more than I thought it was going to.
So the funny part is like, it really hurt, but there's something inside of you with pro wrestling is like, you're not normal. Like, you're like, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's like, it's not like you like the pain, but you welcome it.
Yeah, I want some more. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it's just such a beautiful thing of like, it's art and you get to be an athlete.
Yeah.
So like the athleticism part, it's like, is no joke. Like they call it ring cardio. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how to explain it because it's like, there's regular cardio, right?
Yep.
And I'm not saying like wrestling's above everything else. In my mind,
Pussies.
It is, but but there's something about like the cardio in the ring. You're like you could hit the ropes like 20 times and be totally winded.
Yeah.
Like you just ran miles.
Oh man,
dude. And obviously like when your cardio is better, you get used
to it.
Dude,
wrestling has become such like a big stage now. Cause I remember like when I was growing up, I went to a WWF or a WWE match. There were 3 rings. They were setting off fire out of the tops of the ropes and everything like that. And I fell in love with it. And then wrestling went through like this little downturn of people being like, wait, is this not real? And like over the last couple of years, I feel like it's gotten so big. I mean, Logan Paul, as an example, he's a professional wrestler now.
Yeah.
And he's using that platform to travel the world and show everybody his face and his wrestling persona. Yeah. It's so cool.
I feel like it can really, and this is something that Super Beast, the owner of Dark Arts, he shared with me when I first started too. He said, wrestling is like, can be such a portal to so many different things. And like, obviously, you know, your love for wrestling can be whatever, acting, writing a book. Like there's so many different things, you know, that people have blossomed out of wrestling. It's like just comes from the core of loving wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, but it's crazy. It's
Dude,
like, you're definitely got to have a little crazy.
I mean, it's so sick though. I mean, like one of my favorite people is, I think, about The Rock. Do you know what I mean? Like he still is rocking his wrestling name and everybody knows him by that. But now he's a world-renowned actor. He's in all Jumanji movies. He's got his tequila and everything like that. And it all started by him saying, "Can you smell what The Rock is cooking?"
Right.
You know what I mean? That's so sick.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah. So it's just so cool because you can really be, you'll appreciate this too. It's like you can be whatever you want to be, whoever you want to be. And like, there's no limits.
Yeah.
Like, you can like be the most insane character.
So let's describe your wrestling persona, your character. What is your wrestling name? And then what are like your character traits? Like what are we known for?
Yeah. Okay. It's funny you asked me this because I'm really deep in the character development right now, and it's changed, which the irony of that is like, I've changed, right?
Yeah.
But my first in the tag team, I was like the Savage Yogi, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep this like yoga thing going on. And honestly, I still didn't really know, like, okay, I was the baby face, right? And on the good guy team. But, and I think that's how I'm definitely going to start off, as baby face or stay forever. Who knows?
Okay.
Can't give it away.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, and then I went into like this, do I want to go into like more of like a deeper Savage character, you know, where it's like, do I want to lean into the Japanese? Like, do I want to? So I don't have an answer at this very moment because so Aaron, my fiance, he got me like this fancy pen and journal. He's like, all right, here's a fresh journal. We're going to, because he's been in the film industry for like 18 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's like, we're going to really like get into your character. So I'll come back to you on that later. Yeah, when I know for sure. But I think I'm going to really hone into just like, maybe the noble savage character, because I really like the fact that it's like the vision I have in my head is like, it's okay to be a savage and like be crazy and like just really let loose, but also like have that like zen, right? Like, you know, that picture of like half of the face being like zen and like really peaceful and the other just being a complete maniac.
Yeah.
Like that's how I feel.
I feel like, you know? I heard Joe Rogan say something on his podcast one time. He was like, you'd rather be a samurai in a garden than be a gardener in a war or something like that. And I was like, there's so much like palpable relatability in that, because you'd rather be that noble savage, you know what I mean? And be able to turn it on and just like fuck people up, but also be able to have it under control as well. And I really get that vibe from you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All the smiles and everything, but I feel like you could really go in on somebody.
Yeah, it's like, but that's like, it's, I really resonate with that, because I remember I saw that, I think it was on Instagram or something, and I thought it was, you know, an image, and I thought, wow, like that's me, you know, because it's like, I really strive to be a good person, and like I really do believe in humanity and like believe people are good, but at the end of the day too, it's like what's his name, I can't remember who said this, but it's like you have to be prepared to like kill everyone in the room if necessary, like not to sound crazy, but like you can be a good person but also like be ready to go to war. You know what I mean?
And I feel like there's just like so much mentality in today's world. It's like, I heard, I think it was Dana White, so the president of the UFC, was telling his kids, he was like, if you are at all a savage in today's world, you can win so easily because everybody is so soft. And that related with me, because it's like, you have to do the work to get the things that you want, and they're out here for the taking. But everybody always is like kind of caught up in the attitude of like, maybe I'm not good enough, and we defeat ourselves before we even get started. And it's like the savages are the people who make things happen, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can be a good person and still be savage.
Absolutely.
You know?
100%.
And I think to kind of piggyback what you're saying too is like where that comes from, where like almost like being too nice is really steps over people, is because society, it's like, oh, if you're everything's selfish these days, like that's just my opinion. Like, oh, you say no to something, you're selfish, or like you take time for yourself, you're selfish. It's like no, like, you know what I mean? It's like creating boundaries in everyday life. It's okay to do, and you know, you're still gonna love the people that you hang out with. And like my friends already know like that I'm wrestling and doing crazy stuff, and like I love them, and I might not see them all the time, but it doesn't like make my love for them any less. You know what I'm saying?
And I feel like that's a huge part of like, as we've gotten a little bit older, I've started to recognize that in myself. It's like, first of all, nobody's paying my bills other than me. You know what I mean? Second thing is, nobody's going to try and accomplish my dreams at the same rate that I'm going to. Yeah. And if you're truly in my corner, then you're going to be like, go get it. And like, when I come back and check in, you're going to be like, yo, what's going on out there?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. Because it's like, if you're really going for something, oh, and I read this in a book that Aaron gave me called The One Thing, and it totally mind blew me, man. Like, and it said, oh, I can't think of it, but it said exactly what you're saying, how there's no such thing as balance if you're really hitting something hard. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, we can have as much balance as we can, but you can't really like fully be balanced if you're really like hardcore pursuing something.
Dude, if you're trying to be the best of all time, where is there room for balance?
Right. And like, it took me, like, that really hit home, because I was like, wow, because with the yoga stuff, I was like, oh, I should always be this and this, like, and yes, okay, like, we find these pockets of peace and balance when we can, right? Of course. But if you're really like shooting for something and you are laser focused and you like eliminate all distractions, like, you're going hard in the paint, and you have to say no to stuff.
Do you feel like that's been realization that you've started to have as we've gotten a little bit older? Is like, one thing that me and Malia were talking about is like, this year, it's September right now, at the time we're recording this, has gone by so fast.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, I feel like I have less and less time, and I have exponentially less and less time for all the bullshit and doing things that don't align with where I'm trying to get to anymore. And it's like, unless I'm willing to put the time in, I don't know if I can go through another year, 6 months, 2 weeks, or whatever it is, just like kind of sitting back and being like, oh, because like time is ticking. Yeah.
Every minute counts. Every second counts. And it's like, even when I don't know how psycho you are about calendars and stuff, or like, or, you know, setting certain days for certain things and having a routine, but every block, you know, it really counts. And like, even, I'm trying to say this without sounding like a dick. Yeah. But because it's hard for us when we have so many people in our lives, like, I'm trying not to sound arrogant either, you know, I'm just being straight up, like, people, when you vibrate at a certain frequency, and like, if like what you're doing, you're killing it, you know? So I'm sure, like, so you're attracting, like, you're like radiant, and your frequency is like, okay, like, people want to hang out with you, right? I'm sure they do. Like,
I appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah. But really, so it's like, you know this because that's who you are. It's like, well, of course people want to hang out with you. You're like living it. You're like pursuing something. People want to like be around people that are getting, sorry, I'm trying not to swear. Yeah. You know, stuff
you can fuck
done.
It up. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, just effing shit up, you know? So it's like, because you become a light, I'm just using you as an example. It's like, you have to recognize people that are really sucking the energy. And like, I say that with the most heartfelt, like, I'm not trying to put people down, and I'm not saying that people are bad people. What I'm saying is, like, you have to match your energy with the people you're around with. And they have to either be, I'm going to sound so mean. They have to either be like on your level, or you want people that are more successful.
Yeah, dude, I'm not trying to drag anybody.
Yeah, anymore. And I really hope that doesn't come off like rude, but that's how it is.
I mean, I feel like, and that is one of the issues that I have with culture today. It's like, everybody always says, don't leave the people behind who you like grew up with. And so like, growing up in Hawaii and living on Maui for the first 18 years of your life, how many people do you stay in contact with who you went to high school with?
It was 0 until recently, and because I'm very mindful of who I reconnect with, you know, as we all should be. It's like, anytime people, because you're giving people your energy and like, you know, your vibration. So I have 2 of my best friends from high school that I recently reconnected with, and we talk here and there. But you know, it's not like a full blown, like, hey, we're visiting each other every blah, 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 but it's a reconnection. Yeah. But yeah, before that though, it was zero. And it wasn't intentional. It was just like, hey, I'm here, you're there, or, you know, people move and like people reconnect, and then people reconnect in times when they're supposed to reconnect.
Yeah.
I really believe we're supposed to separate sometimes at certain timelines, and then maybe you are meant to come back. It's just, life's crazy, man. Like,
It really is. It really is. And I mean, like, we've talked about like identity a couple times today.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the reasons why I think it's so advantageous for people to cut people off, as crude as that sounds, is like when you get around people, friends, family members who knew a previous version of you, they're going to speak that version that they know onto you. And it's so frustrating to see so many people go back home and they're like, well, I just like moved back home and like I'm hanging out with my high school friends, or all the same people. And it's like, those people know you as that person who you once were, not this person who you've become. And so it's like, it's so vital in order to, I guess, really absorb and become that identity of who you're becoming, to be around people who are going to speak that version to you, rather than try and pull you back to a previous version. Because if we were talking about like Keenan when we first met, it was like, dude, me and Dante were drinking so much, we were partying all the time, we weren't being responsible. And it's like, I don't really click with people from that time in my life because that's not who I am anymore.
Right.
And it's like, we have to separate ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Like, because isn't that crazy? Like how much we've changed,
dude. It's, I mean, but it's like, it's not crazy because like I talked about in the very beginning, you've always been somebody who's been pushing themselves. And that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. Cause it's like, naturally, I feel like we've always connected on that level. And now coming back together, being able to talk about the perspective now that we have on who we once were to who we are now is so much more tangible and honestly kind of like comical.
It is, because it's so far-fetched from like thinking back, right, of like who we used to be. It's like, and that's the beauty of it. It's like, wow, we've evolved, and without even sounding like, oh, I'm the best, you know, it's just the reality. It's like light years ahead of where we used to be. And that's really amazing to see, with not just us but just people in general. Like, I love seeing people in general just evolving, you know, and the people that choose to stay the same. It's like, I used to have a mentality of thinking I'm better than them. And I will say that out loud. I used to be like, oh, so-and-so, but then I really like removed my ego with that. And I was like, no, like that's their choice. You know, I was like, okay, if they want to be there, that's fine. And that's, if they're happy there, let them live their best life there. I will just be moving it along, you know? And that's like, that's the beauty of it, is like, then you find other like soldiers, right?
Who are marching.
You're like, oh, you're faster than me. Okay, cool. Let me like catch up and learn from you. And like, and then there is that beauty of mentorship too, when people, maybe people that are younger, they want to be like you. And then it's like, comes full circles, like you get to help people, you know? So.
And I feel like that's one of the main reasons why I want to start the podcast in the first place. I was having a conversation with my sister one time, and she was like, Keenan, wouldn't it have been nice if you had an example of who you are now for when you were younger? And I was like, I'm at that point in time now in life where it's like I can start setting an example for people who are younger than me. You know what I'm saying? And like that, from a mentorship perspective, is something that I've recently started to click into. Like, so recently we started a mastermind. There's like 12 of us who meet like twice a month. And it's a range from guys who are like in their 40s all the way down to kids who have just turned 21. And the kids who are 21 are so hungry. And I wanted to bring them into this group because I was like, listen, you have so much more time in the game. And if you can learn anything from us and what we share with you, you're going to be light years ahead of where we are. And that's just so important to like pass down to the next generation. That's
beautiful, because that's what it's about too, right? It's at the end of the day, it's like, okay, yes, we can kill it and we can keep evolving. But it's like, when we're able to pass that down to people, that's so powerful. Like just really helping like, the next generation. And, you know, because what it is, it's like talking to your old self, you know, or like talking to my old self. Like when I see, it's like when we see our old selves in people, it's like not a pity thing, right? It's like, hey, I've been there. And if I had known X, Y, Z, I feel even further ahead, you know? So that's so awesome. That's really cool. And it's like different generations like collaborating and teaching and learning from each other. That's really cool.
One topic I want to kind of riff on a little bit is I have a concept of like violent accountability. So
I love that. It's like, oh wow.
I've really come into kind of the understanding as I've gotten a little bit older that I am the only person who can control what happens in my life.
Right.
The relationships I'm in, the way I respond to certain things, how I react to certain situations. And all of it really comes down to accountability. So when you were talking a couple seconds ago about like people who are still living the same life, I also come from the place of like empathy of being like, yeah, you're making that choice to continue to live that same 6-month pattern that you've been doing. And maybe the pain of staying the same hasn't outweighed the pain of change as of yet.
Right.
And so what do you kind of think about violent accountability for the perspective of like, you're in control of everything?
Yep.
Like how you react, the diet, the workouts, the way you kind of proceed and like present yourself to other people. What is your perspective on that?
I could not agree more, because I am so savage when it comes to like, I can't stand excuses. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but I do not give a flying F, like whatever your excuse is. Because if you have excuses, you don't want it bad enough. Period. It's so simple. Like, people, oh, you know, I really want to do this. Okay, well, what have you done for X, Y, you know, what have you done to push yourself in that motion? Nothing. Okay. You don't want it bad enough.
Right.
You just don't. Like, you know, and I'm not trying to sound mean or harsh, you know, and like I have no soul. I do. But pro wrestling, like that's what made it clicked. I was like, I want this so bad. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I'm going to eliminate whatever I need to eliminate. And I'm going to add what I need to add. And I really feel like that's it. Like, you know, with your goals or with anybody's goals, it's like people like to place blame.
Yeah.
People like to, because it feels good. It feels better if I blame you for something.
Yeah. Or the universe and being like, dude, I'm just like so unlucky, or I never got the shot that they got, yada, yada.
Like, just stop. Like, you know, like, so I usually when people like talk to me about excuse, I don't know where to go with it, because I'll just sound kind of like a dick. Like I'll be like, you don't want it bad enough.
And this is where I feel like we just need more people to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the truth has become something, and I'm not sure if it's because like the last couple of years, people have always talked about like 8th place trophies and like this millennial generation is so soft and yada, yada. But it's like, first of all, like, you guys raised us. You know what I mean? So like, you're the ones who gave us the trophies. I wasn't 6 years old and getting an 8th place trophy. I didn't go pick that out. You gave that to me. All right.
Right.
But the thing is like, I think we need more people to tell the truth. And I recently saw this guy on Instagram. His name is like Andy Elliott or something like that. He's like a sales coach. And he's standing up in front of this group. And there's a guy standing on stage. And he goes, take your shirt off. Takes his shirt off in front of everybody. And he's standing there. And they're like, this guy's one of your most successful guys, right? He's a killer. And he's like, so why does he have this baby fat? And he starts like pinching him. And he's like, does this bother you? And he was like, yeah, it does. And he was like, it doesn't bother you enough. Because if it did, you wouldn't have it. And I was like, dude.
Yeah.
We need more of these conversations. Then they did like a little flash to the end of the clip where he was like, I've lost 20 pounds because of Andy, because he showed me that I was making excuses for myself. And like, it's somebody who really needs to tell you the truth every once in a while. But like the society we live in has become like so soft and not accountable to their own actions. And I feel like we need people to kind of like shake us back up if we're going to get to a place where we want to get to.
Yeah, because everyone's very sensitive.
Yeah, very
sensitive. Like, but it's also, I think society has, like you said, softened everybody into like, it's such a fine line, right? Because it's like, okay, yes, we want to live in a world with like empathy and like, you know, to be compassionate about each other. But at the same time, it's like, stop being such a wuss.
Yeah.
Like,
I literally cannot say it better.
Like, I'm sorry, but you know what I mean? Like, if you really want something in like the pit of your soul, and like you want something so bad and so hard, like, and you can't come up with the fire to go get it, then you really don't want it.
Yeah.
And that's fine, right? Like if people, you know, because some people are like, oh, like I wish I could work out like you, whatever. It's like, well,
you could
just be at peace. If that's not how you want to live your life, be at peace with it. Don't go around saying, I wish. You don't wish.
Yeah.
You don't, because then you would have, you know, so it's okay to accept what you want your life to be and just own it.
Yeah.
You know, just like own who you are. And I can't imagine a life with no like dreams and goals.
Dude, I mean, that's why I feel like so many people are stuck today. It's like nobody, like, I'm going to take it this way. I was recently watching this podcast and this guy was talking about, just from the male perspective, how much responsibility you have to push your lineage forward as a man.
Ooh,
He was
I'm
like,
excited to talk about this.
for thousands of years, no matter what you believe in, people had to avoid saber-toothed tigers. They went to war. They dealt with famine, the plague. They had no food. They had to move across the country, walk on foot, cross the Rocky Mountains. And then you're going to sit here today as someone who's in 2023, and you're going to sit around all day, play video games, and then bitch and complain about how far you are not because you haven't been given your chance or you're not lucky. It's like, think about all the thousands of people who have come before you, who sacrificed everything for you to get to where you're at. You have a responsibility to push yourself forward and become the best version of you, or you're letting everybody else down.
Right.
And it's like, that hit home for me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't know if like I've ever told you this, but like my great-grandfather was a sharecropper in Arkansas.
Wow.
So that means my
No,
great-great-grandfather was a slave. My grandfather was born in like the 1930s. And was spit on in the streets. He had to take his cousin or his younger siblings on a train from Arkansas up to Washington by himself at like 8 years old.
Wow.
Grew up in the 60s, super disparate, super discriminatory United States. My father was the first entrepreneur in my family that got us to where we're at today.
Wow.
And now it's like, how much responsibility do I have on my shoulders to make these guys proud so they can look down at me and be like, dude, this guy's fucking getting after it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, or why did I do everything I did for our family just to sit here and watch you kind of just like piss it all away? You know what I mean? That's like so upsetting to me.
So it's like, when you really take that perspective, right? It's like, okay, our problems in 2023, like, are they really that?
Dude, my internet's not fast enough for me to download. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Yeah, but that just goes to show like how drastic, because we couldn't even like, I can't even, as you're saying that, I'm just like, wow, like what a different world.
Yeah.
Like just from a couple decades, you know, like what a totally different world. And so, yeah, people need a little bit more callous on them. I feel like those are the people that are going to really shoot off to places. But you do need a vision and you need to know where you're going. I used to think, just gonna find myself, you know, like, no, like, yes, that is a part of it, but if you lock in like a pit bull, right, it's like this is it. And sometimes it takes us a while. Like, I haven't had, like, pro wrestling is different than any other like passion I've ever had in my entire life. It's crazy. More than gymnastics, more than yoga. Like, I can't even explain it sometimes, you know. So like, you know, once you find your passion, it's like, this is what it's about. Okay, everything is making sense now, you know. It's like all aligning. So, but I feel like sometimes it takes people a while to feel that, you know, because it's like, I'm 34. Like, this would have been nice if I knew this like in my 20s, but obviously I had some dirt I was going through back then, and like, you know, different emotional mess I was handling. So we're all on our own path and our own timeline, but yeah, I think some people have a hard time finding that because of the distractions and the rat race and the cycle of just life, you know, and not choosing to break free from that. Because if you're in a cycle, like, how can you possibly look out?
Dude, you know? Like, this is one thing I was talking about with somebody one time. I was like, our generation, specifically since, let's just call it 2000 and forward, we are dealing with an element of life that people have never dealt with, and that is distraction. If you think about, I saw this one like calculator that said you take your average screen time and then you enter your age, and it shows you how much screen time you're going to spend for the rest of your life if you continue on this path. Mine was like 7 years, because I had like 3 hours and 20 minutes that day on my phone. And it was like, if you just continue at this path, you're going to spend 7.5 years of your life on your device. And if you think about how much time people spend in this little thing, just like looking at stuff, looking at other people, looking at what other people have, we get so distracted from actually putting our time into what we're trying to accomplish that no wonder nobody's accomplishing anything, because we're all we're all trying to run our race, but at the same time, we're not even like moving forward because we're looking at everybody else just like running past us.
We're overstimulated.
Yeah.
And like, I want to touch base on what you said about comparing. Like, I think that's huge with like, you know, social media. And like, for a while, I really didn't like social media until I learned how to, which you've done the same, right? Is you learn to really use it for good and use it to build some kind of work that you can, like, if we can utilize these platforms to deliver good and like deliver truth and deliver, you know, real stuff and not just distraction, then it's like, okay, great, let's do this, right? But in general, if someone's just scrolling, the apps are made, especially TikTok, but I'm sure all of them are made to keep us on there.
I mean, dude, that's been a huge change that a lot of people have been so deep in the platforms that they haven't really recognized. It's like when Facebook and Instagram and stuff came out back in the day, it was a chronological timeline of what happened during the day. You get to the bottom and it'd be like, you're all caught up.
Yeah,
but
oh my
like,
gosh, I remember that.
Yeah, but like, and then those days were like, oh my God, I got to get off this thing.
You're like, all right. Yeah.
But like now they're serving us information and images and these things that are meant to keep us engaged, that naturally you can go down this hole and before you know it, you're spending 3 hours on your phone each day, not getting anything done. And like, it's so violent to kind of see and think about how the younger generations of people are being affected because our community has not gone from comparing ourselves to our friends and the people in our town, but comparing ourselves to people in Dubai and Australia and people who live in Hawaii and people who live in places we don't live. And normally you didn't have that perspective and difference in your life until you started looking through this little black box that showed you the rest of the world. And that in itself is something that a lot of people haven't paid attention to.
No, absolutely. Because like, I can't even fathom, think about like when we were teenagers, right? God, because I didn't even have Facebook till college.
That's what I mean.
So it's like, I actually like I remember thinking about this, like almost being kind of terrified because I don't know about you. I want kids, you know, someday. So it's like, but almost kind of being scared, like, oh my gosh, like, you know, our kids or future kids, it's like growing up with that. It's like, how do you parent that in a way that's like, not overly shelter them, right? But also realize like what it can do to their mind. Because if they're seeing all these photoshopped, like unrealistic things, and then even like cutting deeper into the insecurity one already has at that age, you know, it's like, so it's so tricky, man. Because it's like, there's good to it, but there's also like such a dark side. Yeah. Such a deep dark side that can really, really like get a hold of people. And when they see the Joneses or other people, and then they're feeling bad about themselves because they're not, I don't know, on a yacht somewhere or whatever, you know, it's like the comparison, I feel like really gets to people, and it probably did even extra during 2020.
Oh know? Yeah, 100%. I mean, dude, we were so isolated. We were we were spending so much time on our devices and like looking at everybody else. Like one of the things that I heard yesterday that I was listening to, this guy was talking about business, and he was like, 90% of all businesses don't make $1 million a year. Wow. And I was like, that's 90%. Interesting. He was like, 90%. He was like, but Instagram won't show you that, because everybody who you see on Instagram who's a business owner is like, I'm flying in a jet. I just got this Rollie. I got this brand new car, blah, blah, blah. And it's interesting how the perception of these social media platforms haven't really become like this evil thing, but they've just become like a mirror for what people are willing to put in and what other people are looking to get out of it. And like that type of realization is super important. So I don't know how we have those conversations with our kids, because you have to set a framework of like, hey, listen, this is a version of society, but if you go around every single day, you're probably not going to see that version of society. You know what I mean?
What's the word? You know, when something is embellished.
Yes, embellished. That's a good one.
It's embellished. Probably half of it's not that real, and I mean, that's all you can say. I mean, really, you know. And it's, again, it can be a powerful tool, like, you know, like if you're, depends what your industry is, but it can. But like, I have to actually tell myself not to consume. Like, okay, I'm gonna create more than I consume. Yes. You know, and it's not like, it's not that I don't care about everyone else's life. It's, I just know that the app is there to keep me on and, you know, get me into this, whatever. And then the comparison starts, and it's like, I already know all that happens. So it's like, I can just talk to my friends and know what's happening in their life, you know, like, so, but that's like a hard, like, boundary I have with myself. I'm like, I can't consume that much, or otherwise it's just not healthy. It's not healthy for us.
I mean, it's just, it takes you down a place where it's very difficult to kind of get a grasp on what's actually happening. Like the Surgeon General came out and did a national press conference where he was talking about, I think this was like late 21, maybe early 22. He was like, the biggest challenge that we face in society is not a second wave of the pandemic, but it is isolation and loneliness. Oh my God. He's like, isolation and loneliness is a problem that is running rampant through society today, because we have people who are sitting in their homes by themselves on their devices looking for a sense of connection that they're not going to be able to get like they're hanging out with their friends.
Right.
And I heard a really scary statistic. It was talking about how people who are isolated are expected to die 15 years earlier than people who have strong social bonds.
Wow, 15 years.
15 years. It's more than a decade of time. It's a decade and a half.
That's crazy. And I'm sure like there's obviously a whole science behind that, and like, just it makes sense because as humans we crave relationship. Like we need that connection. That's why in prisons, isolation is like the torture chamber, just like being in a dark room. Like it makes sense because we have to feel loved and appreciated and like be able to express that, so that's wild, but it does make sense. Like, if you
there's
think
a
about it
documentary right now on Netflix. It's called, oh man, I forget what it's called, but it's on aging, and there's something called blue zones. So
okay, I've heard of this.
So blue zones are where people live to be 100 years old. Right. So there's a small section in California. There's a small section in Japan. There's a small section in Hawaii. There's a small section in different parts of the world. There's 5 blue zones where these people live to be 100 beyond anybody else. And they break it down to the elements of social connection is a gigantic reason why people at the end of life live as long as they do, because they have a tight-knit community of people who they can literally just chop it up with. They do community activities, they sit, they talk about life, they pool money together so they can support each other just in case somebody comes on like hardship. And
it's like a big family.
It's a big family. And it's like, if the data's out there, then why does everybody always want to run so like lone wolf? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because maybe that's what we're told in society, but the data and the science suggest the exact opposite.
Wow. And that's, like you mentioned, as a society, I feel like there's nothing wrong with independence, right? There's nothing wrong with being an independent, strong woman or like solo wolf or whatever. But I feel like that was really like pushed, for a long time. It probably still is. And there's nothing wrong with it, but there's such power in like the dynamic of a friendship, a partnership, a family, and I didn't realize that until my current relationship, because to be honest with you, after, again, not harping on all the other ones, but not like there's millions, that sounded really bad, but but I had it set in my mind that, me by myself is stronger than me with a man. That's what I actually believed after my past relationships, I said, because I will always have to compromise myself and I will always lose part of myself. And that's the story I had in my head. Well, and then I met Aaron and I realized, oh my gosh, like, wait a minute, you can still be whole and true to yourself in a relationship with the right dynamic and the right person. I let him be a man, he lets me be a woman. That's just our dynamic, right? It's like, that's, us as a heterosexual couple, right? It's like, okay, well, I know, what makes him feel good as a man, like, because in our dynamics, it's like, okay, well, a man feels good, feels like a man. That's just.
And what is the basis of that from your relationship perspective and like your feminine perspective as well?
Yeah, so I feel like dropping into my feminine means like letting him lead on things, like trusting his judgment, like talking about stuff, whereas before it's like I had the extreme before where I felt like I never had a say. And then so I went extreme within myself with like, oh no, like I make all the decisions, I will always figure this out, I got to do this and that. So it was always on both extremes. Like single me was like, okay, I gotta, well, it's because we have to, right? When we're single, it's like, that's how it is. And then I had the total opposite before where I had no voice. So it's like, okay, having those moments where it's like, oh, I think this is a good idea, but let me talk to him and let's make the decision together, because as a man, like, you're a man, right? So it's like, right, you would appreciate it, having a conversation. And I'm not going to bring your relationship to it, I'm just focused on mine right now, but like, like I let him lead where I used to feel like, oh, I had to lead, or like I don't question certain things. Like I trust his judgment, and we have conversations about stuff. It's not like I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever you say goes, and vice versa.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's always a conversation, and it's like, my mom, you'll appreciate this too. My mom taught me a lesson. Like, I was like, oh, my mom gives me like golden nuggets every once in a while. I'm like, wow, mom, okay, because she's in obviously a happily married, right? And she's like, even if, you know, you have to save face. That's what she calls it. If your partner, even if they say something totally ridiculous in public, or like you don't agree, like you always stand by them, right? Like, or if he says something silly, I won't shame him in public, but I'll pull him aside and be like, hey, I thought that was kind of weird, or like, I thought that was kind of ridiculous. But it, you know, like as a woman, like and I'm just saying as a woman because I am a woman, but in that dynamic of like, hey, like I always have your back. Like I always trust you. I don't know if I'm even answering your question.
No, you are 100%.
Like,
you are.
I think the main thing is letting a man lead. That's it, you know, and not just being losing yourself like a slave, like, oh, I'm just gonna whatever he says go, but allowing that and showing the trust, and I don't know, just letting him be a man.
I think that's beautiful because, you know, at the end of the day, I think you did an amazing job.
Okay.
And
like treating him like a king.
Exactly.
Like,
I mean,
that's how I treat him, and he treats me like a queen.
Yes.
That's just how it is.
And the biggest thing that I think a lot of people lose, or the misconception, especially in today's world, about like what masculine energy is men want to dominate every scenario. And that's not true. But what they want to feel is they want to feel respected.
Yes.
And like that is the difference. It's like women love to feel loved, and that comes in many different forms: emotional literacy, listening, be there for support, be the ear that they can just talk to. But from a male perspective, it's like, I just want to be respected. I want to be respected among my peers, and I especially want to be respected in my relationship. And so everything you were talking about, like letting them make the decision and then being able to not shame them in public and saving face, like those are huge elements of the masculine and feminine relationship.
Right.
Because it's like, you know, we were never told growing up how to handle our emotions.
Right.
There was never a conversation where any guy was ever literally told how to handle our feelings. But we were always told to be tough. We were always told to like suck it up, dust off the dirt, stand back up, keep going. And like what that manifests into is just like a need for respect. And so it's like when I see all these girls who are running around and like, I talk about, you know, being like a boss girl and everything like that. I think that's great. But I also recognize that you plus somebody else is going to make you a whole lot stronger.
Right.
Like you can go quickly by yourself, but you can go farther with somebody else.
Correct. With the right supportive, like foundational relationship where you guys know and you guys communicate, hey, this is where I want to be. You need your individual goals and then your couple goals. Yes. Right. So it's like, if those are clear, you're unstoppable. Yeah. Like you're really unstoppable. And like, you know, and both of us, like, so Aaron has, obviously he's a masculine man, but he has a soft side. He has a feminine side. He's so compassionate, so loving. Like that's his, you know, feminine side. And obviously with wrestling, that's like my masculine side, like, you know, like, so, you know, but it's like balancing, like, it's balancing all that. And like, yeah, just allowing him to really, when a man feels like he's in his masculine and a woman feels like she's in her feminine, in our type of dynamic, right? Then there's harmony. Then there's like, oh, okay, I don't have this constant state of anxiety of like thinking I have to do everything. It's like, okay, he's got it. Yeah. And I got this, you know, we all like, we play our part. But yeah, it's really beautiful to have that sense of truly stepping into like what we are.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of, you know, the masculine feminine energy today comes from a place of thinking that you have to go out and fight for yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, unfortunately, so many people in our generation have grown up with like single parent households. And so they've seen dad or they've seen mom having to work multiple jobs and provide and everything. And like those elements in themselves often are the split between masculine and feminine energy. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Right. And so it's like, I see so many girls out here who are like, I don't need a man. And it's like, I understand where you're coming from and I empathize with you because I think I know where you're coming from. But I really do think that if you have a solid partner who's going to be strong in the areas where you are weak by natural design, then you guys are going to be so much stronger together. And it's just so much more harmonious like that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more because it's like, because I used to be that woman. I get it. Like, I don't need no man. Like, that, I get it. And I'm not, like, trying to offend anyone, but, you know, I understand because that's who I was.
Yeah.
And, like, I, like, didn't want a relationship. I'm like, oh, men, they're just bringing me down. That's the attitude I had, you know? But it's because once you meet the right person for you, and, like, you know, everybody's different. Like, I'm a Christian, so I really, like, God brought us together. Period. Because it was unlike any, like, you know, that's just like, oh, that's our story, right? So it's like, once the right person, whatever you believe in, the universe, God, is brought into your life and you feel that alignment, and it's not just automatic, because there's still little traumas that are like, make us hesitant.
Yep.
But recognizing, oh, this is not from this is from this. And then working through that, you know, because those arose too. It's like, oh, wait, you would have, like, I would have little triggers, which I'm sure he did too, but it wasn't from us. It was us, like, working together, but it was stuff still that needed to be cleared out, you know, from previous relationships, which is amazing to be able to recognize.
I mean, and that recognition only comes with experience. You know what I mean? That perspective, like they say, hindsight is always 20/20, but you have to continue to look back and search for understanding. You know, I saw this quote today as I was doing this review for our business, and this guy created a database for us for high performance mindset people. And he wrote in there, when something's not going right or you react poorly to something, ask not what's wrong with this situation, but why am I reacting this way?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, that is so foundational to be able to ask the question, like, why am I being triggered like this?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That sense of awareness is so profound in just maturity and looking for the reasons why this is happening, not being like, I am this emotion or I am this situation, but like what caused this as well, which I think is so powerful.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful, because it's like, we don't have to identify with what we're feeling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, like you said, okay, I'm feeling anger as an example. I'm not, like, I don't have to identify with the anger, because I feel like we do that. You know, I've done it. Like, everyone's done it. It's like, oh, no, I'm just going to be angry and, like, probably blame it on you or something else or whatever. But yeah, really understand, like, okay, what is it about this situation that's making me feel this, you know? And a lot of the times I would ask myself, like, okay, what is it that's making me feel this that could be something in my head from the past? Because 99% of the time it was that. Yeah. It was something that I didn't deal with that came up again, because it will keep coming up until you deal with it. Yeah. This is how it works.
Dude, I mean, it's like, sometimes one thing I've recognized of getting older is like 99% of the problems that we have in life are often in our head and aren't even real. I want to say it was like Mark Twain or somebody who said, like, I've had thousands of problems of which 999 of them haven't come true. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's just crazy to think
like
about stuff that
worrying.
way. It is.
You know, like, worrying, I read somewhere, it's like worrying has no point. Like, there's no benefit to worrying, because it's either, well, 99% of the time it's a false story, and you're like, oh, this might happen. Oh, I hope this doesn't happen. Well, now you're manifesting it, and now you're just thinking it and feeling it into existence, so it's gonna happen probably, you know. So it's like, yeah, it's because I think it's this overstimulation of everything, and like that causes the anxiety to begin with, because I feel like because we're all so overstimulated by a lot of things these days, we have a lot of anxiety. I know I've caught myself, like, there's some like it was a couple weeks ago, I was like, I feel so anxious and I don't know why. I'm just anxious, you know. Then I lifted some weights and I was fine, but but you know what I mean. Then it's like anxiety and then worry, and then you're like, wait a minute, I just wrote a fake movie in my head and I could have just not.
Yeah, I know. You know? And that call to attention, I think, is just so important for so many people, because it's like, we spend so much time with ourselves. You know, there's an analogy. There's a book called The Untethered Soul. Have you listened to it?
Yes, I read it so long ago that I really forgot it.
Yeah.
So I got to reread it.
So
but yeah.
The analogy in there that really stuck with me throughout the entire book was the analogy of the roommate. So he talks about that interior voice that we have, the one in our head. Yeah. If you can hear that voice, that means that you are observing that voice, meaning that voice is not you. Okay. And he was like, imagine if that roommate, that voice in your head, was somebody sitting next to you on the couch and you guys are watching a movie. and they started blatting off about everything that they talk about. Like, did I make sure I changed over the laundry, or should I go to Costco? Do you think Costco's open tonight? It's like, dude, shut up. I'm trying to watch the movie. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, if you think about how much false advice that voice has given you and how many times they've made you feel insecure, you often would not kick it with that person. But because they've spent so much time in your head, we often think that we are them and they are us. And it couldn't be further from the truth, which is very interesting to kind of go through that mental exercise.
That's like such a mind F.
Yeah, it really is.
Because you're like, because it kind of goes with when we hear something so many times, whether it's said by the roommate or people in our life, we will believe it.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, it's almost like, not to sound morbid, but it's like killing the roommate. Yeah. In a sense, or like just really like however you need to, or it will probably, I'm going to take that back. It'll probably always be there. Yeah. There's always going to be homeboy in there. So it's not necessarily being in denial, but being aware. Yeah.
And being able to call them on their BS.
Yes. Just like, hey, okay, because our minds are, in yoga they call it the monkey mind. It's like always like going crazy in there, so it's always going to be there, but just getting a hold of the monkey.
Yeah, exactly. Tell them, be quiet,
tame your monkey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I want to spend the last couple seconds here. What are you excited about right now? What's happening that's got you the most jacked up?
Pro wrestling. No, life in general. No, I mean, so many things. I feel, well, obviously I'm engaged, so I'm just like over the moon about just, having that move forward in my life and just finding a partner that just understands me, my craziness, and I understand him. And then pro wrestling, of course. Like, I feel like it's exciting to be excited about something. Yes. Like, I'm so excited to just go full force and just continue it, in its entirety. That's what I'm most excited about right now.
Well, I'm excited for you. Things. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to feel charged up and excited about the things that we've got going on in life. It makes it so much easier to roll out of bed in the morning and just get after it. You know what I mean? And be that noble savage like you were talking about.
Thank you. No, this has been amazing. Like, I look up to you and admire you and respect you so much too, just because of like your mindset and your mentality. And like, I'm really like grateful to reconnect with you, even if it's every couple years. Yeah. You know what I mean? So maybe we'll have another one in a couple years. Absolutely.
Well, guys, that's been another episode of the Heart and Hustle podcast. Leah, why don't you share where people can find you? So if they want to find more information about you, about your journey, how can they follow you?
Yeah, awesome. So my two main platforms, I would say, are Instagram and YouTube. So Instagram, it's at Lehua Misako. I'll spell it out for you. LEHUAMISAKO. So it's my Hawaiian and Japanese name. And then same thing, Lehua Misako on YouTube as well. So I have the yoga classes, and actually some random stuff on there too, but I'm going to incorporate more of the wrestling, and that's my plan, to do like yoga for athletes and stuff like that. So those are my two platforms at the moment. Facebook is more like family stuff. We can link up on there too.
Well, Lehua, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
See you guys.